hello there, and welcome to a special edition, I guess, episode of Around the 412. You will not be able to listen to this as a podcast, so I might as well not say if you're not listening to this back, because that's not going to be a thing. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this evening before the Steelers and Eagles kick off. We didn't do a show since last Saturday when we did our exclusive interview with Penn's forward Brock McGinn. Go check that out, by the way. If you're watching on Twitter, head on over to the YouTube page to do so. While you're there, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, all that good stuff. But anyways, we haven't done anything since Saturday, so we figured might as well, jump on here a little bit before the Steelers and Eagles kick off and maybe talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame game because we haven't done that yet, and talk about maybe a little bit of what we want to see going into the preseason week number 2. Well, week number 1 for everybody else, week number 2 for the Steelers. You know what? Let's start with something unrelated to last week's game or this week's game, though, because somebody actually just texted me right as we started recording. Shout out to my friend Boston. And he's like, what's going on with this TJ Watt stuff? Like, why are people making such a big deal about this? Like, I don't think it's in question that this dude's going to show up and play week 1, right? And I don't know how to answer that because there's like some people are just so off the wall with this stuff. Like, don't extend him, just tag him next year for $17 million and see what the team looks like in life after Ben, and then see if it's worth even extending him. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we're talking about one of the best defensive players in football, if not Aaron Donald. Sorry, so second best defensive players in football. That has just been everything that you want in a franchise player. And if you're not paying that guy, who are you paying? Like, what kind of message does that send to the rest of the locker room? And that was my biggest point about it. What kind of message does that send to the rest of the locker room if you're not willing to pay a guy like TJ Watt? Who are you going to pay?
Exactly. I think we all know that sports is a business, and it's carried that way most of the time. However, I feel like there is an obligation for some teams, for specific players, to do the right thing. And I feel like in that case, TJ Watt has earned this contract like beyond any means. I mean, he's the leading sack leader to begin a career with the Steelers. He's probably going to be their all-time sack leader in, 3 seasons, maybe, if at the pace that he's going at. So I really think that they need to do TJ a solid, get this contract done, because I feel like you kind of like tarnish the relationship a little bit if you're not doing that. Like, I understand he can still get $17 million on the franchise tag next year, and you have every right to do so as the team. But like you said, what's that message that you're sending to the rest of the locker room? Like, if you're not going to pay him, who are you going to pay?
Yeah, make it coming up after that.
Exactly. He's the best player in your team. He's probably the second best defensive player in the NFL. You got to pay him. You got to give him that contract. You just bite the bullet, even though you're going to be paying him more with the contract than you would with franchise tag. I mean, who cares? And for the people thinking like he would like Le'Veon Bell the game and then just like sit out the entire year, I don't think so. First off, I don't think that TJ Watt is that type of player. I think he loves football and he loves his team and loves his city and his fan base. I think he would want to play whether he had that contract or not. I don't think that's in him. And second of all, he's still getting $10 million this year. Whether he gets that new contract or not, he would be playing for $10 million, and $10 million is $10 million. I don't really think you want to hold out on that.
Yeah, if I could, I thought your second off was going to be what I'll add to it. So let's just say third off. I'll just piggyback off what you're saying there. This isn't like he's holding out. He's literally been there every day at training camp. He's just not doing the team drills. He's still there working every single day. And I don't think that the team would necessarily want him going through this stuff anyway. Like, regardless of if he was signed to a new contract or not, it's not like TJ Watt would be suiting up to play tonight. So really what you're talking about is you would like to see a little bit more participation from him in training camp. But really that's the only thing that he's missing out on right now. But to get back to just the overall point of this, we could keep saying it over and over again, but that's the type of guy that you do pay, not just because of the production, but also to send the message to the team that you're going to keep these guys in house. Like, the Steelers have never really been the team to shell out a large number in terms of guarantees. Like, even look at AB's contract. We only had like 19 million of whatever it was, 60 million plus guaranteed. They haven't been that team to necessarily do that. Now, they completely honor these contracts and everything like that. But when you talk about that fully guaranteed money, the Steelers have never really been that team to do that, they're going to have to break the mold on this contract and do something completely uncharacteristic, but it's time for them to do so. Like, this is the one to do that on. You're going to see, I understand the salary cap went down $16 million this year. That's going to balloon back up 20 plus million next year, and then we're going to continue to see that happen. So people are like, oh no, you can't pay him, 28 million plus. Like, everybody's stuck on this 25 million number. 28 million plus for him is going to look like a steal in a couple years when you see these other edge rushers that are like Nick Bosa probably going to break that because you're going to see the salary cap balloon even more. Like, that's the way these things work, and TJ Watt is definitely a guy that deserves to reset the edge market.
Yeah, I think you want to get his number fixed early on because, like you're saying, I mean, we see it just to relate it to another sport. We see it in hockey. I know it's a flat cap right now, but we've always talked about Sidney Crosby's contract, how it gets better and better every year because you got that number in like early on, and then you were able to let the cap move up, and it's less percentage of the cap every year. That would be the same way with TJ, and I feel like whenever you're people talk about the Steeler way. I feel like the Steeler way would be doing TJ solid and giving him the contract because let's face it. I just don't think it's sending a good message if you have that caliber of a player that has produced the way he had. It's not like he was just a first round pick and he's been like average. I mean, he's been the best edge rusher in the NFL since he's came into the league. So you got to do the right thing and extend him.
Yeah, Ken brought up, didn't it take this long for Cam to sign a few? That was actually just previous to last year. He signed literally 1 week before the Steelers kicked off in their Monday Night Football opener against the Giants. So, yeah, it's not like unprecedented for these contract talks to be going on right now. But I think that the biggest thing is you do want to see a little bit more participation in training camp from TJ, especially like, when you talk about like last year, they didn't really have the preseason at all. Again, I don't know that he'd be really playing in preseason games, but the training camp part you would like to be a part of. Yeah,
there's certain guys on the team. TJ, I think Mink is in that camp. Ben, even Ben. I know that people are going to probably wonder, is Ben going to start next week's game? But why should he? Like, we know he's the quarterback. Same thing with like TJ. Like, why should he play? Like, we know.
I am curious though with Ben what he is going to look like because like. Now we're a full year plus removed from that surgery. Like, you could argue that arm is going to be even stronger this year than last year. I mean, obviously that knee, arthritis isn't going to go away like that. Like, you're still going to be dealing with that. But we saw what happened, from that Dallas game on. Like, if whatever that was, and it wasn't just arthritic, is also gone away. Like, what is Ben going to look like? I do think that we see him play a little bit in that preseason game against Detroit, and then probably don't see him at all in the fourth game. I think that he'll play, maybe close to a half. I mean, that's traditionally what happens. Normally when you have, and the Steelers do have 4 preseason games, traditionally when there are 4, we do see him play about a half in that third game, and that's pretty much it. Give Ben 2 series to shake off the rust. Yeah, I'd be fine with that too. I mean, I think that we need to see something in terms of game action. Like, if they didn't do it, whatever, I'm not going to sit here and harp on it, but I would like to see the ones play a little bit against Detroit next Saturday. Were you going to add something else?
Yeah, speaking of the ones for me, and this is going back to last week and talking about tonight, do you think that they should hold off on using Najee Harris as much as they did? Because I feel a lot of people were talking about that. Like, do you want to risk injury in this guy like early on in his career? I mean, you want to see what he can produce. But at the same time, if you're keeping him out there as your sole starter for like a half at pretty much, it's kind of taking a risk if you're going to do that, especially for every single preseason game.
Yeah, I think because he played last week, I probably wouldn't have him play this week, knowing that you're going to have him play a little bit more because, assuming Ben goes and you have all the ones play a little bit next week, I probably would not have him suit up for tonight. But listen, I mean, as much as like I'm worried about the potential of an injury, I mean, I like that they're literally like Tomlin's like he's going to prepare as if he's playing all 4 preseason games. They want him to get run in each one because this is what we're expecting from him. We're going to get our run from this guy for at least 4 years. Like, he's going to be a true bell cow back, and we're all excited to see him. So I think that it gives reason to people to watch a preseason game for sure. If they didn't do it, I would probably be completely okay with that, as you can tell based off what I'm saying. But I understand the reasoning behind him playing a series or 2. At every single one. I think that he'll play more than that though in the third one.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I just don't think he should play all 4 as much as he did in that first one.
Yeah, maybe we don't see him in the fourth one at all because that would be the one that traditionally you don't see like any of the starters really. So
yeah, It would also
We'll
be
see.
different if there was more of a running back competition, but there is a competition, but it's more for like who's
Behind
RB2 and RB3. It's not who's RB1. I mean, this guy's a 3-down back. That's what we drafted him for. You know that going into the season.
Yeah, if he's not a 3-down back, then we got problems because something went horribly wrong. Okay, so let's talk about last week's game then a little bit. Obviously, you don't see the likes of TJ Watt, who we mentioned, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Joe Hayden, Ben, Juju. None of those guys suit up. Minka didn't play at all. But there were some guys I felt like that really did stand out. I mean, Alex Highsmith looked like a man amongst the boys in the limited action that he got. I mean, he just made it look so easy out there. Najee Harris did have a few nice runs. I want to talk about two guys on the offensive line, though, Kendrick Green and Dan Moore Jr. Dan Moore Jr., a fourth-round pick who we're not expecting or at least hoping we have to see much of this year, got off to a really bad start at training camp in more ways than one. But the way that he has progressed just in a short period of time here, I mean, you can see why, even though he's a fourth-round pick, that's in a very good offensive line and tackle class.
Right.
Probably means he'd be a second or third-round pick in any other year. Like, you see that this guy has the potential to be a starter in this league. I think already we're starting to see some flashes of that. So Kendrick Green, Dan Moore Jr., I think that what you saw immediately was Clem's influence. Like, these guys are mean. They played physical in that game, and I liked what I saw up front.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I think with Kendrick Green, there was a lot of question. How is he going to actually perform in a game at center? Because he didn't really play much center. He was transitioned from the guard position, and he did really well. And I think, like you said, he's just like a mean fighting machine in there. And with Dan Moore Jr., I just really think that helps sure up a lot of depth at tackle because with Chusa Okorafor moving to left tackle and Zach Banner coming off that knee injury and starting this again, it's a lot of question marks on the outside of that offensive line. And so having that depth and knowing that he could step in to help take the place of one of those guys, that's really reassuring for the Steelers offense.
Yeah, and Schutz has been banged up too. Like, we've seen very little of what we actually expect to be that day one offensive line. Kevin Dodson, who I'm excited to see, a little bit of preview for what we're going to talk about with tonight's game, things we're excited about. I'm excited to see him because this is, his first game action in a long time. A guy that we felt plug and play left guard to start the season obviously came into camp, and that wasn't the case. Had to deal with a little bit of an ankle injury and some other stuff, and he's got to earn that starting spot back now, and it's been widely talked about. So this offensive line, we haven't seen these guys play together, and it's at the point where something that we were already questioning, right? Just has more questions because we haven't seen that starting five get any reps together. But that's why it's so reassuring to at least see something in that Hall of Fame game. Kendrick Green playing a position he only started 4 games at in college. And then Dan Moore Jr., who was, a project pick, but I thought showed very well in his first game. Obviously, Ricky wants us to talk about Big Papa Punt. And how can you not when you talk about that Steelers Hall of Fame game? Presley Harvin III, maybe the best game that I've seen of all time from a punter. I don't know. Just a ridiculous display. Shout out to Adam, Renegade Adam Steele, Adam himself, whatever you want to call him. He made a legit YouTube video just out of Harvin's punts in the Hall of Fame game.
Listen, I really think that if you're Jordan Berry at this point, you're like, why am I even here still?
And that's the thing is Jordan Berry, from all accounts, is having his best training camp as a Steeler.
I know, it's crazy. But I feel like between the two, if you're going to use a draft pick on a punter, and especially the way he performed, he's going to be on the team. Plus, look at the way that this guy has been reciprocated or accepted by the Steeler fans already. Big Papa Punt. I mean, it's a great thing to see, and he was drilling it. I love the Pat McAfee videos on Twitter during that because he likes to get riled up about great punts. Another guy that impressed in that preseason game last week, I think, was Kalen Ballage. I mean, I remember we talked about this guy coming into this offseason. We're like, all right, so the Steelers basically just signed another scrub running back, and it turns out this dude might be making the team.
Yeah, I think the thing with him is the one thing that, when you look at, you can kind of understand why they went out and got him is he was very good in 1-yard runs. Literally, he's just a situational running back. That's all he does. It's just that short yardage work. And that's where the Steelers really struggled last year. I mean, I don't need to say that to any Steeler fans. They know for a fact that was the case. And, yeah, I mean, with Benny Snell and Kalen Ballage dealing with a little bit of an injury, I'm curious to see if we see him suit up tonight at all. But all the running backs really behind Najee Harris have been dealing with injuries. Anthony McFarland came into last week's game with a little bit of an injury. He had ice on his leg, every day leading up to the game, still playing the game, but wasn't very effective. And then Benny Snell, who we haven't seen really anything from in training camp. And he's really the one, I think, if you're talking about somebody being on the bubble in terms of that running back room right now, that isn't like an obvious answer. Like obviously, like Jalen Samuels obviously on the bubble, Trey Edmonds obviously on the bubble. Benny Snell is not secure, in my opinion, on this 53-man roster because of what we're seeing from Kalen Ballage.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think the two that you could probably, I don't want to say guarantee. Well, the one that is a guarantee, Najee Harris is a guarantee. I feel like the next man up is Anthony McFarland after that, just because not only was he a draft pick last year, I just think the potential in this offense.
The familiarity with Matt Canada too. I mean, yeah, and that's part of what you're saying with, the familiarity with the offense. But, when you talk about him and having his college head coach back in Matt Canada, like that means something in my opinion. Like I think that there's going to be certain plays that they have. Like we saw, shout out to Nick Faribault, who's been, just doing tremendous work covering the Steelers camp, say that he was seeing some stuff we'd see like Najee Harris lined up out wide and McFarland in the backfield. Like they're going to do some different stuff with these guys. It's going to be intriguing to see, but I definitely don't see McFarland not making the roster. Like he's going to be on this roster, and obviously so is Najee Harris. So really it's what goes on behind those guys, and they'll figure that out here through training camp and the preseason, but they got to get healthy. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So,
and Ricky's asking about Samuels. To me, I think the only way that Samuels makes this team is if he's a stud on special teams. He just doesn't really provide anything offensively. It's like the play needs to go perfectly for him to be productive in it. I just don't think he can create on his own.
Yeah, I want to bring up too, just because I saw it was so many comments ago that I've kind of scrolled past it now, but Sean brought up Quincy Roche, and he was another guy that I thought had a really nice preseason game. But like, I think all the edges, like Cassius Marsh even has come on as of late. He had a decent Hall of Fame game, but like him in training camp, he's just gotten better and better. And I understand that he's kind of being pushed now. Like, probably came into training camp thinking he had a good shot at being like that third edge, and then we go out and get Melvin Ingram. So now it's like this guy, obviously like a 6th round pick too, he's kind of on the bubble. So, that completely changes what he thinks his role is going to be. But the other guy that I wanted to talk about was Jameer Jones, who is like right now, I guess, edge number 6, if you will. But like with what he's doing, he's making himself a very tough cut, which is really all that he can do. Like all these guys on the edge have just been very good, not just in the Hall of Fame game, but in training camp. And it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. Obviously, we know Watt, Highsmith, Melvin Ingram. Those are the top 3. Roche's going to be on the roster. What happens with Cassius Marsh, though, and Jameer Jones.
I feel like this is a good problem to have. One of the positions of lacking of depth that we talked about early on in this preseason was the edge position. And now that we're being able to kind of like lock up this depth, it's a good problem. I don't know what's going to shake out between Cassius Marsh and Jameer Jones. I mean, when you're talking about your 5th edge rush guy, it's pretty good problem to have.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about is the performance, at least for this game. We can move on and talk about what we're looking forward to tonight. But let's talk about the quarterbacks, because that's obviously going to be the hot topic behind Ben Roethlisberger pretty much the rest of the preseason. Mason Rudolph starts the game. That's going to happen again tonight. Dwayne Haskins will come in and run that 2-minute, and then play into the third quarter as well. And then Josh Dobbs is going to finish the game. We're going to pretty much see that same layout. As far as time on the field, it might not look the exact same, but essentially, it's going to look the same. How did you think that those guys fared in game 1, though? It was interesting to me that like people made it seem like there was a huge discrepancy between the way that Rudolph played and Haskins played. I actually felt like Dobbs looked the best, but I think that you have to also take into consideration the talent that they were going against as well. Because by the time Dobbs comes in, he's playing against, inferior competition than the other two. But I didn't see anything.
Hand, he was playing with inferior teammates, if you want to say that as well.
Yeah. I just think that, like, mediocre Mason, and we got to come up for something with Haskins, too, that sounds the exact same. Because I didn't see anything to separate either one of those guys. And the problem for me with Haskins, more so than Rudolph, is I feel like Haskins needs to have the much better training camp and preseason games to be able to elevate himself over Rudolph. Like, it didn't come in as a neck-and-neck competition in my mind. So, like, Haskins has to be that much better in order to take over that QB2 spot, because he's fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, like you and many other people, Dobbs impressed me the most. He looked like he was in command of the offense the most out of the 3 quarterbacks. Now, when it came to the other two, Mason, he kind of had a similar feel to like where I just didn't think he was confident in his reads and in what he was doing, and I think that affected his play on the field. And with Haskins, I just feel like his biggest problem to me that I noticed was he feels like he has to rush everything, and that includes the throw.
Happy feet. He's got happy feet,
and the throw itself. Every single throw is 100 miles an hour. If you have mediocre base and you have 100-mile-an-hour Haskins, that's because whether it's a 25-yard throw or if it's a 5-yard throw, it's a bullet right at you. I mean, we saw that. Who did he throw it to? Anthony McFarland, or was it Washington? It was like 5 yards away, and he just threw it, and it was a dart right at his hands. It doesn't make sense to me. That's one of the things that he needs to learn is when to put touch on a ball. You don't need to fire it in there every single time. I wasn't impressed with either of those guys in the last game. I'm hoping that changes tonight. I mean, I know during the camp we've said Haskins has looked good, but if it's not going to show it up in games, what's the matter? What's it look like in practice?
Yeah, he's definitely been the better of the two throughout training camp practices, but really this job is going to be won by what they do in game situations. So, these games mean way more than those training camp practices do, and neither one really did anything to separate themselves, like I said, but also, like I said, it has to be Haskins to do so in order to snatch that QB2 job away from Rudolph. Like, I really don't see a way that Rudolph regardless of how bad Rudolph looks in training camp, that's not going to make Haskins take the job from him. It's going to have to happen in a game situation with him playing that well. I mean, do I see it happening? No, not necessarily. I keep giving him, a ton of praise, and I'll continue to do so because I don't care. Nick Farabaugh, again, he was doing a post-game talk last week after the Hall of Fame game, and he said, Haskins' lower body really is really what kills him. He's obviously has some arm talent to him, with definitely how hard he can throw the ball and how far he can throw the ball. He needs to work on his touch, obviously, but a lot of that comes from just his really bad lower body mechanics. And, it's year 3 for him now. If that's not cleaned up by now or very early in this season, I don't think that it's ever going to happen. So for me, I mean, that's it. I'll leave it at that none of the guys have done anything to really separate themselves. Dobbs has looked the best, playing with worse competition as well as going against worse competition, but neither Rudolph or Haskins are doing anything to make me change my mind that all of a sudden one of them are the answer post-Ben.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess my question about the quarterbacks now is, I mean, not only just what are we going to see tonight, but when it comes to Dobbs, do you think that if he continues to impress tonight, is it going to kind of force the Steelers' hand to keep 4 quarterbacks?
I thought you were going to say, is he going to get some run, with players higher on the depth chart? Because Ken brought that up as well, and I wouldn't be opposed to that whatsoever. I don't think that he should be completely out of the picture to be on this roster as a 2 or 3 for this team. But as far as that's tough. Because I don't know where you find the time to get him more reps because you want Rudolph and Haskins to have that battle. I mean, maybe week 4 you do see some guy, maybe like the second string, because like I said, we're not going to really see the number 1s in that game. Maybe you see Dobbs get a chance with some of the number 2s. But I was mainly answering
this might be a bit of a hot. This might be a bit of a hot take.
Question again? Even what did you ask?
Do you think that there's a chance they could keep 4 quarterbacks and Dobbs will force their hand?
Yeah, I do think that there's a little bit of a chance there, just because we know how highly the organization views Joshua Dobbs. Even if it's not necessarily what he's able to do as a quarterback, they know that he's an asset to the team. They brought him back when Jacksonville waived him, and then they signed him to a new 1-year deal this offseason. They want him in the organization. I think that they're just biding their time until he decides, I just want to be a quarterback coach.
Yeah,
and not play football.
I mean, that would be a great transition, just have him be the quarterback coach. But this might come off as a little bit of a hot take, but I think if throughout the rest of the preseason, if I see no improvement from either Mason or Haskins, no one really takes over the position more than the other, I don't really have an issue with them just rolling with Mason into the season, cutting ties with Dwayne Haskins, and then having Dobbs as their QB3.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously not going to get rid of Rudolph. They just gave him an extension towards next year. He's the only quarterback under contract next year. Man, at the same time, like I don't know if now this is just me trying to get in their head, their line of thinking here. I don't know if they're going to think that just one off season with Dwayne Haskins was enough. Like they might still feel like they can do more if throughout another one, and him watching, 17 games of a regular season of Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah,
I think the upside. Yeah, I think that the upside will keep him around, even if he doesn't show anything this year.
I guess I'm more so saying like it wouldn't bother me, honestly. They signed him for nothing. It doesn't really affect the team in any way. So
he got signed to a futures deal for $800K. Like if he makes the team, it's a huge win. If he doesn't, you took a low risk and it didn't work out. So at the end of the day, though, like if we're making a prediction on this, I do think that he makes the team. If anybody doesn't, I think it's going to be Dobbs, but I don't think that it's necessarily out of question that he still finds his way back. You have they're keeping the practice squad roles the same as last year, so you get 16 players on it. Like if somebody else, he's going to be one of the practice squad players if nobody else in like another organization doesn't want him.
Yeah,
and there's no doubt in my mind they'll find that spot for him.
I feel like it's very clear that as of right now, Ben's replacement is not on this team, and that there's a huge drop off from Ben's play to the quarterbacks behind him. So basically, if Ben goes down this year, don't expect one of these guys to lead you to the promised land. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say to that is I 100% agree with you. Like that, throws out really any high aspirations. Like, anything more than maybe a playoff berth, if that is out the window. Just because this defense maybe, and if you have some semblance of a running game, could get you to the dance, but you're not getting much further than that. But what I will say is, like, how many teams do have 4 quarterbacks on their roster that have played in NFL games? Like, it's very rare. Like, I feel like, oddly enough, even though I feel like Ben's successor isn't on the roster, I feel like they are one of the more deep teams at quarterback, though.
I guess that's
like,
true.
It's not the worst situation. Yeah.
We're not saying it's good depth, but it is depth.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, okay, if Ben goes down, like, look at the Colts situation right now without Carson Wentz. Although Carson Wentz, very good news, looks like he's going to be back along with Quentin Nelson for the opener, like if things continue to trend the way they are. But say he wasn't, say that Carson Wentz was out for the year and look at Indy's situation after that. I would much rather have our situation without Ben than Indy's situation without Wentz.
For sure. Question for you. If it was up to you, now don't take this as if you're you're thinking how the Steelers would think. If this is your decision, Ben goes down in the season, at least based off last week. We have 3 more games left, but based off last week, who are you putting in after Ben goes down?
It's still Rudolph for me. I mean, until I see something more in game from Haskins, and it's not going to happen. But if I saw maybe something from Dobbs with the guys that he'd be playing with, then I think there's a case for it too. I would say that it can't necessarily be an open competition. Like unless they were to go into that practice week saying everybody's getting reps with the ones and we'll figure it out during the week. I just think I don't know. For me, it's Rudolph because listen, even the last time that we saw him play an NFL game that mattered in Cleveland, he looked all right. That's the only 300-yard game that wasn't Ben Roethlisberger's for the Steelers in the last 70-some games. So he looked okay in that game. If that's what he's going to be going forward, especially with Matt Canada now, who's going to be able to simplify things and has a playbook just for him, I can live with that, and I think that the Steelers could do a lot worse than that. He's mediocre, Mason. He's not this guy completely sucks, Mason.
You're right. You're right. Either way, I really hope we don't see it. Do you? If you had to put a prediction on it, do we see another quarterback
this year?
Yeah.
Man, 17 games is tough. That's gonna be tough. I'll say.
Well, 17 games for any quarterback, but 17 games, 39-year-old quarterback.
With obviously,
with the injury
medical
history
issues that he's had, just in recent memory. I mean, hopefully he doesn't play all 17, but it's because it's meaningless at the end of the year.
True.
I'm gonna say no though, and I don't think
that sucks.
Yeah, I don't think it's a long term. I don't think it's a long term thing, but it's just so hard to predict.
Do we see the boot?
We're gonna see the meme regardless of what the injury is, if there is any.
Big Cat will be all over it.
Rudolph needs to play like he did in Cleveland. 100% agree. If you get that Rudolph, I think that you can live with it. This could still be a team that not necessarily makes the playoffs, but could still be in the mix.
And Ben needs to not play like he did the week after that.
No boot. You say no boot. Yeah, I hope not to see the boot broken out either. Okay, so let's talk about this game real quick before we get out of here and this game kicks off. Like I said, I think the big thing for me, man, is we're getting to see Pat Freiermuth make his Steelers debut, and we're getting to see Kevin Dotson make his preseason debut, not able to go last week. So other than that, I mean, it's kind of just the same thing. Let's continue to see these quarterbacks behind Ben play. Hopefully we get to see like a healthy Anthony McFarland get some run in this game, because I think he needs to show you a lot more than what he has. You know, I have high expectations for this guy to at least be like a breather for Najee and a home run hitter type in that backfield. And then on the other side of the ball, I just want to keep watching James Pierre do his thing and see what happens in that nickelback battle between Arthur Millette and Brooks Jr. might not even be playing. I know he's been hurt all week. I haven't seen. I don't think
Brooks Jr. is playing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, throw that out.
Arthur Millette and Shakur Brown.
But Millette was really bad last week, so we'll see if Shakur Brown can maybe make some noise in that battle. Not necessarily to jump Brooks Jr., but maybe to become the second guy in command in the nickel. And then of course my guy Mark Gilbert. The other corner spot, who I think, man, I think that by the time training camp and the preseason comes to an end, I think that we're going to see him jump Justin Lane on the depth chart.
It's really not that hard to do. Justin Lane provides almost
nothing. Yeah, I like the way that I'm saying that as it's coming out of my mouth. Like, it sounds like it should be more of a hot take, but it's really not.
Probably the only reason it is a hot take is because this guy is a undrafted free agent, and Justin Lane was a former third-round pick for the Steelers that has just turned out to be such a disappointment. But things I'm looking at tonight, the offensive line for sure. I mean, this is the closest that we've seen to the projected starting offensive line. I believe out of the starters, it should be Chooks. We'll get Green. We get Trey Turner tonight, which is his first run. He didn't play last week. And then we get Zach Banner as well. I believe Rashad Cowers is probably going to start tonight, and Dotson will go with the twos. But at least that's some semblance of what it should look like going into the season.
I'm not upset about that, because, I mean, Dotson's going to play more of this game than we see Coward play. And I think by doing so, watching the way Dotson's going to manhandle these guys that aren't number ones on the other side, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, all this stuff that we're talking about right now is going to be in the past, to be water under the bridge by the time that we kick off in Buffalo, and Kevin Dotson's going to be the starting left guard. He has to be. Like, we expect him to be the best offensive lineman on this team. That was the way that we were coming into this offseason thinking so, carrying over from last year. And that was with David DeCastro coming back, by the way. I still would have said Kevin Dotson is going to be the best offensive lineman when we kick off this upcoming year. And I still feel that way. So without having him in the lineup, those questions I had about the offensive line, they're even more magnified, regardless of the glowing reports that we can get from guys like Kendrick Green, Trey Turner, Chooks, and Banner. To me, Kevin Dotson's like the guy on the offensive line.
Yeah, I just that will be one of the position areas that I'm definitely watching tonight. I want to see that position group perform well, because we wanted that to be carried into the season, and this is as close as we've seen to that projected starting group that we're going to get. Another guy that's being able to play tonight that didn't play last week, Melvin Ingram. We get to see his first run in a game for the Steelers.
Number 8.
We'll see him alongside Alex Highsmith. Excited to see that duo. It's kind of funny that that's the duo that people thought would be battling it out. And after watching last week, how is it really a battle? I feel like last week kind of proved that Alex Highsmith is the dude that we've been saying he is for the long time, but it's just been like you and I and a few other people that's been saying that. And then
I think that the thing that everybody doesn't get with Melvin Ingram is like his ability to rush from multiple formations. Like, he doesn't just have to be a guy that, like, it doesn't have to just be a straight up battle between him and Highsmith. We're going to see all three of them at the field at times. Like, he's going to be able, you're going to see Tuitt come off the field or Hayward come off the field at times, and see Melvin Ingram, line up in that way. Like, we're going to see all three of these guys. Look at the way that they used Alex Highsmith last year against Baltimore. I think you're going to see a lot of those looks as well. So they're going to find a way to use these guys. They need all three, those two and Watt, and we're going to see all three.
Yeah, and another position group on defense that I want to watch for the depth-wise is we know that Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, those are going to be your starting inside linebackers, but what are the guys behind them going to look like? Are we going to see some cleaner looks from guys like Ulysses Gilbert, Buddy Johnson, Marcus Allen? What are these going to look like in game?
I thought Buddy Johnson, actually, I'm glad that you said his name right there because I thought he was good last week.
So did I.
I'm
I
curious
think
to
that
see.
he was the best one out of the backups, I believe, at the inside linebacker position. And I feel like he's probably going to turn into inside linebacker 3 by the start of the season. And it's just like, who's going to shake up after that? Like, is Ulysses Gilbert the third going to be able to figure it out? Is Marcus Allen going to be able to figure it out? I mean, these guys, UG3, he's been dealing with a lot of injuries over his career. I know, but he hasn't had a great camp. Marcus Allen transition from the safety. It's not his natural position, but I mean, if you're going to make this team, it's going to be as a linebacker, dude. So, like, what are you going to show in these games?
You know what's funny is Arthur Motes, said that he actually really liked Ulysses Gilbert's Hall of Fame game. And he knows he missed that one tackle, but he looked exactly like what Ulysses Gilbert should look like minus that. Like, obviously, he's not Ryan Shazier, but it looked like early Shazier with the fact he's flying around the field, still always around the ball, yet, you talk about that missed tackle, that's something that we saw very, very early on with Ryan Shazier. Now, he wasn't comparing, and neither am I, him to Ryan Shazier, but he still looked the part of a guy that should be put in that role, and that's why he was given the chance, sans Devin Bush, to start that game opposite of Robert Spillane. Now, if there's going to be somebody from this linebacking group that's able to cover anybody that's not named Devin Bush, it's going to be Ulysses Gilbert III. So they need him in some capacity to play better than what now. Like I said, Motes thought he was okay. I didn't think that he had a great game, but I know what the potential is there. He's the best athlete not named Devin Bush in that linebacking room. So I think that you see him kind of be the guy to spell Bush when he needs it, and I think that you see Buddy Johnson as the guy to spell Spillane. I still think that Spillane starts the season, but, man, I'm expecting, like, by next year even, maybe late this season, that Buddy Johnson is just breathing down Spillane's neck for that starting job.
Yeah, that could turn out to be a really good pick for the Steelers, especially where they got him in the draft. And but the last position, and we just spent a lot of time talking about this position, quarterback. We got to see more from the quarterbacks tonight. Mason, I just want to see more confidence with him in the pocket and his decision making. Haskins, I want to see more poise. Like you mentioned, his legs, that's his issue.
Just slow it down, man.
He needs to just slow it down in your mind, and it should slow down in the game. And take some of the gas off the ball. You don't need to kill your receivers with it, okay? And then Dobbs, just keep doing what you showed last week. I think you performed great, and just continue off of that.
I agree. Well, other than that, we didn't even see much from, like I said, with Freiermuth. Like, we didn't see much of the tight ends as well. But from what I hear, like, Zach Gentry's having a really good camp. I didn't really notice him too much in the Hall of Fame game. But, like, this team not even necessarily guaranteed to keep 3 tight ends. I think he's starting to make a push for them to do so, though. He added some muscle, obviously just a massive frame. So
6'8".
I think that's to be interesting to watch as well, yeah. Yeah, there's people that are, like, talking about converting him to a left tackle. Didn't work out a tight end because he's 6'8". Just put on like 100 pounds.
It's basically what they did with Al Villanueva, right?
Yeah,
he was a wide receiver at Navy.
Well, I don't think we have anything else other than just a couple of announcements. It's we haven't talked on this show, like I said, since Saturday. We've made a couple announcements on Twitter since then. The Fantasy Football Show is going to be back. It's going to be a YouTube exclusive show hosted by me, Drew Hannes, and Joe Frick. We are very excited for this show to launch. I believe we're going to kick it off next Tuesday. So
awesome.
Stay on the lookout for that. Like I said, it's going to be exclusively on YouTube. Won't be out in podcast form. And similarly to that, this is still kind of in the works, but I'm sure you guys saw that Ryan Platt is going to come on with us, and especially during football season, and give us his picks of the week. But if you guys remember last year, we always had Stubbs on for a segment, so it's in the very early stages. But I'm seeing if we can work out something for those two to have their own show, and maybe like hosted by me, or if Tyler's around too, but mainly just those two giving their picks and maybe us giving a little bit of insight. We're just trying to continue to bring you guys some unique stuff. That would also be a YouTube exclusive. But Platt Picks is officially on board with Around the 412.
The
I know that he cashed pretty well yesterday. I'm not sure how he's doing so far today, but I know that I did end up talking him into betting on the Hall of Fame, the Steelers preseason game. So he's betting on preseason football.
If you bet on preseason, I would say you are such a degenerate if you bet on preseason football.
Yeah.
Kind of jealous, though.
There were some people were just excited about having Platt come on board. Yeah, no, we're all excited about it. So other than that, I hope you guys do enjoy the game. You're not going to get your official Smitty sign off because this wasn't a podcast or anything. But thanks everybody for tuning in to the pre-show fun. Go out, enjoy the game. You can tweet at us. We're going to be tweeting during the game, so get at us. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next week when I do our regular show. Until then, we'll see you.